Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And we're delighted to welcome Marina Ayton. Marina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Marina. Our audience is definitely in for a super treat here today.
Thanks.
Indeed. By way of an introduction, Marina, you're currently Regional Director for the Majors team at Zscaler, and you've established an incredible reputation amongst your peers and within the industry. And remarkably, 8 years of not achieving less than 200% of your target. I mean, it's an incredible achievement. And since then, you've actually gone and started to build world-class teams of your own, of which every single person in your team is now on President's Club. So I just really want to start by understanding, what do you put that success down to?
I'm going to give a really simple answer and then I'll dig into it a little bit. But for me, to be honest, it's all around consistency. Turning up to work every single day, having done the preparation, having done the due diligence that you need before every single meeting, and doing the basics really well. Right? I believe in PG. I believe that, PG gives you options, allows you to ask difficult questions. And therefore, when I was a rep, that was the single non-negotiable that I did every single day, 2 hours, non-negotiable every day. And not to mention, the day that I spent on it on a Monday. So for me, when I was in IC, that was really the core of all successes. And what I found was that the more new business meetings you booked, the more people in accounts you talked to, the more brave decisions you made to call CIOs, CEOs, CFOs, whatever it was, the more information you gathered. And that led me very simply to just have more opportunities than most people. Because I was doing it consistently, I wasn't saying, right, I'm running this deal, I'm going to just carry on running that and neglect the basics. I learned a strategy in a way to balance both PG and the visible opportunities that I was running. And that was the art that I felt like when I was like really running as a rep and had like my biggest performing years, that I really mastered that skill. And what that skill allows you to do is, when you've got loads of visible opportunities, it allows you to qualify a lot harder, right? It allows you to walk into a room and ask the really difficult questions that no one else wants to ask because they're too scared of getting the answers. But if you've got a pipeline full of other deals that you can go and figure out, what you're doing is simply qualifying your own time. So fundamentally, that is actually what it was. I mean, there are obviously things like like when I was a rep, that I'll talk about later, but it's about working harder than everyone else, being in the office, asking for help from different leaders, being interested in the technology. And then I think one of the things, and now that I'm a leader, what I look for in people, and I think it's one of the key kind of characteristics of like brilliant people compared to average people, is this innate curiosity, this curiosity to truly understand your customers, to consult, to figure out problems, not to leave, not to allow kind of surface level conversations and just take that away and say, yeah, that'll be fine, that'll tick my my box, but to actually, dive deeper, figure out individual, figure out personal wins of the people that you're talking about, all of these things that make you ultimately a more rounded salesperson, or really, a consultant at that point.
It's incredible that obviously it's, PG has set you free. I love the analogy of, the fact that you're able to ask those more difficult questions because you've got more options. So obviously you've got almost less to lose, and you're willing to be almost much more assertive because you've absolutely, because you've been able to obviously put that time in. So obviously, as an IC, that's really served you well. You've got the formula, you've got your rhythm, but how have you then been able to then translate that and assert that on your teams? Because your teams are formidable in just the same way that you are. So how have you been able to kind of transition what you do personally and support your teams in the right way? What are the foundations to that?
For me, it's all around hiring the right people, figuring out what are the people that you are going to get the best out of? And for me, I'm looking for not like mini me's, right? That's not going to work. You have to have a diverse team because you have to have a different perspective, different age groups, different thoughts, different ways of problem solving. So for me, that's really important, hiring like lots of different people with different perspectives. And I've really focused on that, right? Um, I I think then it's around like, what is the person, like who is the person that I'm going to be able to get the most out of from developing them, from making them like, developing them, and also just like making them like ensure that they enjoy coming to work every day. And so for me, I'm always looking for the people who are tenacious, that have grit, that have demonstrated that they've come through adversity in order to get where they are, that are not entitled, right? You talk about software sales. I think we've all gone through this huge boom and bust that we're definitely seeing collapsing now, right? Where deals were easy, money was cheap, companies were raising at crazy valuations. You were giving people, massages in the office or whatever it is. That's now not going to be a thing, and moving forward, it definitely won't be. And making sure that from a leadership perspective, and this is something that I think is like so important for like driving success in your team, is that you have to be able to sell a vision, right? And you have to believe in that vision. And for me, like if you look at my team this year, brand new team that I've run like a few teams now in Zscaler, and now I run the majors team. But the team that I have now, our whole mission this year and vision this year that we come back to every single week is think big. And the idea behind that, so it's very basic, right? But the idea behind that is I want to be the highest performing team in the entire company. I want to be the most dependable team in the entire company, i.e. sticks to their forecast, does the fundamentals, sticks to the basics. And through that, you have to have a vision of this think big idea of doing things that no one has done before, right? So if the biggest deal in the company is $40 million, how are we going to do a $45 million deal? Why aren't we selling the entire platform rather than just an element of it? And it's inspiring people to believe that they can do something that no one else has done. And I am really passionate about breaking all of those boundaries and barriers and encouraging my team. And quite often, right, as you mentioned, like I'm very early in my career. I've been doing this for like in Playbook like 8 years, but I've got a lot to learn, right? So some of these deals, it's like a little bit of imposter syndrome. Some of these deals that you're doing are much bigger than the deals that I've ever done. And so it's about coaching people through that, asking for help from other people, all of these things. But from a leadership perspective, having a really high performance team, I believe that it all starts with a vision. And then as part of that, the team has to, the team has to trust you implicitly, and trust is earned, right? So it's over a period of time where you build a relationship. And for me, like I hope some of them might be listening, but I create an environment where people feel very safe to fail, safe to try things that they might not necessarily try on their own, like encourage them to do that. And yeah, so I feel really passionately about that.
So how do you create an environment where people feel safe to fail, but at the same time consistently smash their number out of the park?
So I think it comes down to the people that you hire again, or the character that you are, right? Everyone joins, well, if you join for the right reasons, these playbook companies, you join to learn, right? Learn, earn, and have fun. That's like the dream that everyone's selling. But it's true. So creating an environment where you are constantly challenging people, where you are encouraging them to do the difficult thing that other people want, encouraging them to look for bad news. Like we celebrate bad news. We start a forecast call with what is the big issue and how can we solve it? Like that is like the mentality that we have. And the other thing is that, the people that achieve 200%, right, are not the norm. They are the A players. They are the people that are like putting themselves out there to go and do what other people don't do. And if you don't challenge them and you don't create an environment of trust, they won't learn. they won't learn anything. They won't feel challenged in that environment, and they will leave. And you will lose great talent if you don't do that. So I think it's definitely, we don't always get it right either. I think that's important to say, right? Sometimes you can really push people, but you really need to understand from like an emotional intelligence perspective when to pull back, when people are struggling, when people, you know, aren't feeling great because things are going on at home. And I think actually, being a female leader, I feel very lucky to be a female leader in sales because I think we're more empathetic. I think that we can sense things going on a bit better than men sometimes in some situations, and I think we naturally want to create a like homely, safe environment where people can come and talk to you about anything.
And so I suppose that there are non-negotiables as well. Obviously, you know, within that there have to be non-negotiables. It's one thing having the right attitude and the hunger to learn, but you know, what are those non-negotiables? And how open are you about those non-negotiables with your team?
Fully transparent. I mean, I'm incredibly direct as a person and definitely as a leader. It's definitely something that maybe I need to work on for sure. But I am a fan of very direct communication. I there are fundamentals and everyone knows about them when they come into the team. The fundamentals are PG. The fundamentals are if delivering like preparation for meetings and making sure that you make a good use of the other person in the meeting's time. You know, we have a responsibility to go to our customers and represent Zscaler, right? And with that comes a responsibility where you have to execute at a certain level. You have to prepare like, you know, documentation, decks or whatever at a certain level. And that's, for me, just table stakes, right? That's why we're paid a base salary, is to execute at a specific level. But yeah, it's not, no one's shocked by that. It's very clear what the, you know, leading indicators, if you want to call them, are. And as a team, we, at the beginning of the year, we set a stretch target for ourselves. We come back to it every quarter. We review the progress against the stretch target. We talk about how our team operate in the business. So, for example, how many days a week we're in the office, what days should be customer days. You know, we do skip levels, for example. So, you know, so I can get direct feedback from my team on how they're feeling and how they're doing. I don't think they're going to tell me everything. So I get, you know, a leader of mine to, you know, do that session, and we get the feedback and we use it and then we improve it for the team. And I think the other thing is, you know, I believe that flexibility is earned, right? And 100% when everyone is doing like their best, everything that they can be, you know, meeting this bar, you can be flexible in the way that you then start to run the team as well.
So Marina, tell us, how did it all begin for you? How did you get into software sales?
So I never knew 100% that I wanted to be in software sales, right? But there were a few things that led me down that path. When I left university, I wasn't really entirely sure what I wanted to do. But during that time, I'd set up a business selling steel enforced fiberglass cherry blossom trees. It's very, very niche. But what I'd used that business to do at university was fund everything that I wanted to do. So I had this like, you know, complete drive that if you work really hard and you make as many phone calls as you physically can, send as many emails to people as possible, that had led me to, you know, having quite a lucrative university career because I had money to spend. I could go do what I want. And better, at that point, you know, I was like super into like going to music festivals. So I figured out a way where I could ring Glastonbury and be like, I've got these trees, you need to have them. I'll sell them to you for this much if you give me 2 tickets. And I did it all the time, right, for 3 years. And it was really fun. Anyway, when I left university, I was like, I need to use some of those skills that I kind of built in that environment and figure out a job that allows me to do that. And I remember I was like traveling in Australia and I was like, I really need to get a job when I get back. Otherwise, I'm literally not going to have any money, not going to have anywhere to live, not going to have all of this stuff. I came across, I did loads of research, and actually my research was really basic. It was like, where do you learn the most and what environment do you learn the most in? How can I make as much money as possible quickly with not any credibility whatsoever? And it all led me to this idea of like an SDR tech sales thing. I listened to loads of podcasts. I wish Hunters and Unicorns was around 10 years ago. It would have been very helpful. And I found this small retail technology company. And I emailed the CTO through LinkedIn, and I said, I'm really interested in your company. And at the time, you know, my parents had been in retail and both entrepreneurs in that space. So I knew a little bit about it, you know, POS systems and stuff like that. They weren't like things that I'd never heard of. So I was like, I can talk with a little bit of credibility in an interview. Anyway, met the CTO, thought he was fantastic. I didn't really understand technology. I hadn't studied computer science, so I wasn't really aware of it. But I kind of said to him in the interview, like, I will make as many calls as you can possibly imagine. I will meet as many customers. I will be told no as many times as you want, as long as you teach me exactly how the technology works, how you pull it together, how you build product, all of this stuff. And he agreed to it. And so that was my first gig, right? It was like a basement room in Borough. We were on an accelerator program. We didn't even have a product at this point. So, but we were selling like endless aisle solutions. So, you know, if you go into like Uniqlo, for example, and they don't have your coat that you want in the store, it allowed you to connect your e-commerce system with the endless aisle solution or kiosk in the store. And so they wouldn't lose a sale when someone came in. Anyway, so I spent my first bit of my career literally promising people the world, and then we'd go and build it for them effectively. But I guess it was a really interesting turning point because suddenly, you know, we landed Travis Perkins, we landed Uniqlo, we landed a number of other like key clients that we didn't think that we would get in the first like year and a half, all from cold call outreach, all from people that we just found on LinkedIn. And then we started to grow. Then we needed more people. Then we started hiring people. We had more people in the office doing different things. And I realized that I was like, God, I'm like 2 years out of university. I have no idea what I'm doing. I've chucked a bit of mud at the wall. Seems to have stuck, but there's no way I am qualified in any matter of the word to help anyone else, teach anyone else how you do this. And I think that turning point for me was like, right, I need to go and search for where I'm going to learn the most and basically be put through sales school. Because I think that was like the moment where it was like, I think I can do this. I like the challenge. I like being told no and going and figuring out another way to turn that no into a yes. So that's how I kind of got into it.
So how did App Dynamics come about then?
Yeah. Okay. So at that point I was like, right, I need to search for some that is the best, and naturally started reading all of these blogs. I don't think podcasts were actually even a bigger thing then, but like reading blogs, speaking to recruiters, figuring out. And I remember this article came up that Jeremy had written, and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to learn. This is someone who is, you know, putting a science behind selling, has a process, that is repeatable, and it's a formula that if I learn it, it will make me indefinitely successful. And so I reached out to Jeremy and Steve McCluskey at the time, and I said, I've been reading all about this. I want to be part of the journey. I've read about App Dynamics. It sounds amazing. Can I come and interview? And that was really how I found them. And when I first got to App Dynamics, you know, I think because I come out of university and I was like, oh, I've done really well for the last 2 years. I was like reasonably confident right when I got there, but and I had some really challenging interviews. The interview process, you know, normal ICE criteria and stuff like that. But I hadn't been taught how to do that. I didn't have a recruiter telling me how to structure a interview like that. It was completely bizarre to me. Anyway, so that was challenging in itself. And then I remember I got offered the job. McCluskey said to me at the end of the interview, is there anything that you want to ask? And I was like thinking in my head, I was like, He was like, maybe, have I got the job? And I was like, yeah, that one. At that point, he then went to one of his leaders and said, Marina's going to start. And this job was for a commercial role, right? Because I'd effectively done the SDR and closing role in my previous job. So I just assumed I'd get the commercial job. Anyway, then I remember getting a call the next day, and it was like from the hiring manager that Steve had like put me in contact with. And they said, PG is the most important thing at App Dynamics here, and we don't believe that you've got the track record to do it. So here's our new offer. You can either be an BDR, but you can't be a commercial rep. So you either take the BDR job or nothing. And I was like, I remember like getting off that call, being really disappointed, and being like, right, I've got to like suck up everything and take a step back, not that big a step back, right? To go and learn the basics and do a really good job. So, but I used it as an opportunity, I remember, because I sat back and I was like, right, what do I really want from this next gig? And how am I going to get the person that clearly has, you know, said yes to me in an interview to back me and almost invest in me? So I spoke to McCluskey and I said, I will take the SDR job, no problem. But there are going to be a set of can we agree a set of criteria that if I hit these things that will be way above the targets, right? Firstly, will you agree that you will promote me if I am successful? And secondly, can I please be put in a team where I can learn from the best? Because that's all I cared about at the time, right? And that conversation was the first like negotiation conversation, serious negotiation conversation in a Playbook company that has really set the tone for my entire career. It is genuinely, that decision to take that BDR job has transformed. I wouldn't be in the role that I am today if I hadn't have taken that, because what it allowed me to do. So weirdly, this is funny. So I was a BDR. So I went in. I was working for Izzy Elmas, who's now, you know, runs everything outside of the US for Zscaler. I was working for him. He was like the RD running the team. Then I had Jason Crean, I had Espen, I had Catherine, I had Eric, and I was their BDR. And what I'd figured out a way to do was, if I'd hit all my targets, which I think it was like 200% of my target was like 4 MBMs every week. And I figured out if I book the 4 MBMs on Monday and Tuesday, then I had spoken to Izzy and I said, if I booked all of that and I'll carry on doing it through the week, can I fly to all of these different countries and go and shadow these reps and learn from them? And that's what I did. So I just made sure that I was super organized. I worked all day Sunday. I got all of my prep ready. And on Monday, I just executed. And then the rest of the week, I was shadowing the best reps in the company, building the best deals. I was sitting on all these QBRs. I was just a sponge. I was asking questions. I built confidence up, which I think is like pretty scary being a BDR when you first go into one of those companies. And I built all this confidence up to learn to ask for help. And that has stood me in such a good place now, because I'm not afraid to ask for help. I know that I'm not the finished article and never really will be. So that's how I got to App Dynamics. And then App Dynamics was a huge learning curve for me, right? I was promoted from BDR into commercial, then to enterprise, etc. And then and had some great leaders, right, that really shaped who I am as a leader today in terms of like the bar of excellence that's set and stuff like that. But also really pushed me and challenged me. And, you know, that environment, not for everyone for sure, but I thrived off it. It was like challenging, difficult. You were constantly, the bar was being raised, and I loved that. And I was competing against the best people, and that's what was really fun.
Marina, you make it sound so easy, right? And I really want to continue at this point. I want to come back to this point and really focus on, you know, where your career went from here. But the bit that stands out, and the bit that I'd really like to know, and I'm sure some of our viewers would, is where does it come from? Where do you get that forward thinking and, you know, this is where I am, this is where I need to get to? Where does that come from, and how have you been able to map out that journey in such a mature way?
So I think it all comes from being a bit neurotic, to be honest, and maybe a bit of a planner, right? But I think ever since I left university, I'm better with a plan, right? I know I have like a 10-year plan on a spreadsheet. I have a 5-year plan, and I definitely have a 3-year plan. And at every stage of my career, that 3-year plan is set out and is very clear across everyone that I meet, right? I don't try and hide it. I'm not embarrassed by it. I use it as a tool to say, if I want to get here in the next 3 years, what are the gaps that I need to work on? What are the things that you believe are not going to enable me to progress to that point, for example? I think that you have to be careful about that, like that 3-year vision, right? Because actually what you have to focus on is doing the fundamental things every single day. And so that's that, like, I hold myself accountable every day with a very high bar that's set, particularly when I was a rep, right? When you are a rep, you're everyone in the playbook, everyone talks about you being the GM of your own business, right? It's true. But ultimately, all that means is that you have a responsibility every single day to deliver what you say you're going to do and invest in yourself, in your team. And, you know, I think for me, one of the things that I've always done is do the choose a difficult path, right? Maybe some of the things that other people might not have done. Actually, I'll tell you a story, right? So when I first ever got to Zscaler, I was here as a rep, and I remember it was really tough at the beginning, right? Zscaler just IPO'd at the time. It's like 4 years ago now, and it was like a lot of change was happening. A lot of new people had been brought in. Jay, our CEO, had brought in Dali to kind of build a playbook culture. But we weren't doing big deals at all, right? We were doing small tactical deals, most of them sourced by the channel. We didn't really have like an outbound sort of cadence and team. And I remember like banging my head against a wall, being like, "Oh my God, I just need like one break, one meeting that's going to enable me to do this." And everyone else had gone to the pub. It was like 7:30 on a Thursday evening, and I was sat there with Jason, actually, Green. And I said, I'm going to make like an hour more of cold calls. I'm just going to write up the scripts and we're going to get a meeting. Anyway, one of the cold calls that I made at 7:15 on a Thursday evening while everyone else was in the pub, and everyone would like, you know, they'd all gone and be like, why aren't you coming? Was to a CIO of a really big insurance company. And that was the call that I made that changed my whole career. After that, I did one of the first ever 6-figure deals in the UK. I think even in EMEA at the time, and you know, ran the playbook execution process from start to finish. You know, we did sort of 65 meetings with that. We had executive sponsorship, and it had all come from that cold call. So it's a very long-winded way of answering your question, but I think doing things that like doing the difficult thing that other people might not want to do.
So you've clearly had a great foundation, education, app dynamics. You've been surrounded by, you know, incredible leaders, and obviously Zscaler, Dali Rajic took the you know, the big seat, the CRO seat, and many of the team transitioned across to Zscaler. Why did you choose to kind of follow that journey?
Yeah, so I think when the Cisco acquisition happened with App Dynamics, I had made a kind of, I think, conscious decision that if we became more like Cisco, it probably wasn't as fast-paced and as exciting for me. And I, you know, my criteria for a job has not changed since I effectively left university, right? There are 3 things that I look for in any business. One is the market. Is it growing? Is the market growing? Is the product market fit great? And is it recession proof? That's, you know, even more important now. The second is leadership. Have they done it before? For me, the best signs of a fantastic leader is someone that has a following, someone that follows people. I think when Dali came here, it was like 67 people followed him, like crazy. Can you imagine? Like that is a sign of like true leadership. And then from the third point is around, is that place in a position to develop me as a professional and to allow me to earn what I want to earn, right? So those are my three criteria. And going back a bit, when I was at App Dynamics, the learning was beginning to slow down a little bit. Some of the leaders that I really, really liked, Mike McCluskey and Jeremy, were just leaving, and I was like, right, it's time for a new thing. And I went out to market, and I went out to market, and I interviewed so many places. And the reason I did that, all Playbook companies, the reason I did that was because when I first left the startup that I was at and gone to App Dynamics, I made a beeline for them. I only ever interviewed for them. And the interview process was so odd to me that I thought, well, I need to, if I love this Playbook environment, I want to be in it for a long time. I need to understand what's out there, and I need to practice interviewing. So I did loads of them. And, I had offers actually on the table from Mongo, Sprinkler at the time. And then I got a call out the blue, and the call came from, I think it was first Jason and then second Izzy. And they said, we can't tell you where we're going, Marina, but you do not sign that contract that you've got in front of you. I hear you're about to sign it. Do not sign it. They send you a contract. You're going to come with us. It will be a really good idea. And do you know what the funniest thing is? I didn't even think about it. I had the contracts. I was ready to sign them. And I didn't think about it. I said, okay. And they said, trust us. And I remember saying to I called my dad at the time, and I was like, "This really weird thing's happening." He's like, "No, like take the job that's on the table. Don't just like sort of sign up for something you don't even know what it is." Anyway, I did it. I didn't sign the contract, and I went to Zscaler, and it was the best decision I have ever made. So there we go.
So obviously, you decided not to stay at Cisco because a large organization. Obviously, you've made a decision now to join Zscaler, and obviously Zscaler is no startup. Obviously you've mentioned some of those elements in your criteria, which is obviously the people, the technology, the product market fit, as well as obviously being recession proof. Was there anything else? And again, going into a large organization that stopped you maybe joining a startup or maybe a more agile environment on paper?
Yeah, but you have to remember, when I joined Zscaler, it was 1,500 people. We were not a big organization, right? We're 7,000 today. So and we were like a startup, right? We operated like a startup. Decisions were quick. We made choices. We changed things. We changed the way that we sold our products. It was like a kind of startup environment at that point, and it was really exciting because we were rebuilding something. And that for me, I loved that challenge. And now it's like a very different challenge, right? We are a scale up. We're at about $1.7 billion in ARR. It's a big company, but with a big company like that, it represents a different kind of opportunity, which right now is reps will come here and do the biggest deals they will ever do in their career, because the problem that we solve at Zscaler for executives, CEOs, CFOs, CIOs is so vast that they will spend a huge amount of money on it. And the business case is so clear, CFO defensible, that it becomes a no-brainer, right? So, and I've made it sound like it's really easy and it's like flying off the shelves. That's not what I'm trying to, but if you seize the opportunity and you have the right conversations at the right level, you follow the process, it is huge. And, actually, I've hired 5, my team is now like 5 majors reps. All of them have, 4 of them have all done their biggest deals of their entire career here. When I ran the enterprise team and started that, all of them did their biggest deals that they'd ever done. And so I think with that opportunity, with that becomes a really exciting opportunity to, again, push the bar a bit further.
So obviously, you've had 8 amazing years, within the Playbook community. What do the next 5 years look like for Marina?
That's a good question. So I think for me, one of the people that has mentored me for a long time always told me this, right? You don't want to ever be in a position where you have to ask for a promotion. You want to be such an obvious candidate that no one even thinks of anyone else. And I do genuinely believe that. I think for me right now, it's around mastering my craft, mastering what I do on an everyday basis to make sure that people, leave my team at the end of the year and they are 10 times better than when they started. That is like my goal. From a like career perspective, my long-term goal, not in the next 5 years for sure, is to be a CRO, right, of a company. And I know that there are a huge amount of gaps that I have on my CV right now that do not that I need to go and fill in the next 5 years, whether that's, running a region, getting experience of running, multiple regions across Europe, then running a European team, whatever it is. I'm very methodical in the way that I think about it, but I think for me, it's around planning. It's around making people aware of your long-term objectives and getting them in for the ride with you, right? I think, one of the key things in any of these playbook companies and the advice that I would give people is build allies, right? We talk about it as internal champions, but really they're allies that care about you, and you earn the right to have those people sponsor you effectively because you deliver, you make it a nice environment to work in. But I can't express the importance of those allies. I've worked with Jason Crean for the last 8 years, and he has sort of, enormously helped me in my career over that period of time. And he is just an ally of mine. So I think you don't get anywhere without those kind of people. And it's also important to surround yourself with people like Jason that challenge you every day, right? That don't say, oh, you're doing such a great job. Because that wouldn't be fun, right? If everyone told me that I was doing a great job all the time, I wouldn't still be here.
Obviously, your first line at the moment, the transition to second line, how do you, obviously you've always got a plan by the sounds of things, Marina. What is the plan in regards to bridging some of those skill gaps, and what is the skill gaps that you see in transitioning from a first line to a second line leader?
So I'll start with moving from an IC to a first line, and then I'll go to
Amazing.
that. So I think it's like, it's pretty scary moving from running your entire own business and being totally independent and responsible for your number to then, taking on 7, 5, 6 other reps and their responsibility. Because effectively you go from being, like single with no kids to married with sort of 7 children. And for me, I found that really difficult because I don't have children. You have to figure out that not everyone operates at the same intensity as you. People respond differently to feedback, so you have to give it differently. And again, going back to the point I made earlier, it's like finding your feet of how to inspire while remaining credible, being very new to the job, right? And that's the thing. Like, I am so grateful that I didn't move into leadership before I did, right? And I pushed back a lot. I didn't want to move into leadership at all. I was making really good money. I was like, I had a huge pipeline of deals. In fact, I would have made a lot more money if I just stayed in IC. And I was really enjoying the IC gig. I had a great relationship with my SE, and it was fun. We were getting into like a great rhythm. But going into leadership, you then have to inspire that team. You have to check in with make sure that everyone's okay. All of the things. And then I think second line, you're not so much about the revenue anymore, right? You can't super rep like you did when you were an RD, because you'll lose your RDs. Well, your RDs will lose credibility, and then the RSMs will start to not, respond to their RDs, which will make them leave. You are now responsible for this much wider ecosystem. So you have to learn to get the best out of people that aren't salespeople, right? So they're not wired the same as us. So marketing, channel, SDRs, executives, product, like everything. It becomes a very different thing. You're now running a wider business. You're not just focused on revenue. And, at some levels you become also, almost like an HR manager, right? A lot of the things that you're dealing with are around people. So to go back to your question on where do I have gaps, all of those things, of course, there are things that you can work on at my level that I am working on, right? How to maximize lift from the channel or the partner community. How can you do that? How can you start to build like grassroots relationships now? You know, how do you get lift from marketing? How do you make sure that all of the activities that we're doing from a marketing function are being followed up on? How are they, you know, how are we actually able to use that data to accurately say that it influenced certain deals or whatever it is? So I think you know, that's a different challenge in its own, not where I am right now. Right now, my focus is, you know, delivering a almighty year for my team and delivering on my promise that I made to them all when I did hire them, which was we'll all do 200% and we'll all go to club again.
And the plan is it's clear. You've got that North Star. You know where you're headed. But along that way, and obviously this is the beginning part of your career, right? You know, you speak about I'm gonna work harder. I'm gonna you know, beat my targets. But by doing that, you're making sacrifices, right? You're making sacrifices because it comes with a time, right? It comes with time that it's going to take you to do each of those elements, right? Which then comes with sacrifices. What sacrifices have you made in the early part of your career and your outside career in order to get to where you've got to?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, lots, obviously, because, I mean, you have to work hard to be successful, right? And I wasn't the best. I categorically, when I joined App Dynamics, I was nowhere near the best. But I knew if I outworked everyone, I put in more hours than everyone, I would simply get better results because that's just maths, isn't it? And I think I have maintained that through my whole career. Now, obviously, I'm not telling everyone to work, you know, 14-hour days and over the weekends and stuff like that. But when you're first starting out, absolutely. I mean, you have to graft for it. No one's going to hand it to you on a plate. And, you know, Dali talks about this idea of invest in yourself. Like I definitely do that, right? I take the time to learn the product. I don't rely on my engineers to know all of the answers. I read outside of work of how to get better. I get feedback. I go to a coach. I do all of these different things. And yes, naturally, you know, it might mean that I get home later, but at the same time, you know, for me, for example, you know, I bought a house when I left App Dynamics from, you know, the earnings from App Dynamics, and I've just redone the whole house. Like that for me is a much bigger, the pride that you have, like walking into that home that you built and redid all of yourself from those late nights, it makes it all worth it. And for me, you know, of course you have to have like a ecosystem around you at home that's supportive of that. I'm very fortunate in that, you know, both of my parents are complete workaholics. They do not really take holiday. And if they take holiday, they're on calls on something. And so it's kind of the norm for me. I have a very supportive, you know, boyfriend who works in investment banking. So, you know, he has worse hours than us. So it's all relative. And I genuinely believe if you're looking for a job where you're going to make a decent amount of money, you can't expect to be there 9 till 5. It's just not realistic. Maybe that's not the PG answer. Sorry.
It's the answer and it's the truthful answer, but it's also, you know, I think, you know, that there is an entitlement, you know, when it comes to people, there's entitlement, right? And I think that it's really, really important that people understand that software sales is a tough game. It's not simple. There's lots of sacrifices that you need to make. And to be at the very top of your game, you need to make sacrifices. You can't expect to do it in a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other thing to like remember. It's like, it's a roller coaster, right? Even my boss's boss's boss has a terrible day or a terrible week, right? It feels like everything's coming apart. The train is off the track and like that's disastrous. But the coolest thing about this job is that it's very easy to rectify these things. You figure out the risks, you get on the phone, you have conversations with people, and you work hard to fix it. Like that's the whole thing. But yes, absolutely. It's not a straight line. It's not easy. It's like a journey, that's for sure.
So, Marina, I'm really keen to understand, Marina outside of work. I know that you're a part of a number of charities and you support some really, really good causes. And I know you've obviously got a very entrepreneurial background with your own businesses. Can you give us a bit of an insight into who Marina is and what she does when she switches off from work?
It's a good question. I think my team don't believe I do anything outside of work, but I do. So there are a couple of things that I'm really interested in, right? I'm very active. I play a lot of tennis and sport. But there are two things that I am like really passionate about. The first thing is building companies, small companies, right? Nothing significant. But I have started three businesses. All of them continue to trade now. One, which is my main weekend focus, which is called Pink Diesel, which is a Bandol rosé company. If you haven't bought any, you can buy some now. And that is honestly what keeps me creative. It's like a creative outlet that I have after a hard week of something that is tangible, that I can see on a shelf, that gets sold in a shop, that I love being part of. And evidently, I don't have time to run any of it in the week. And I have an amazing co-founder who does that, who runs it. But I really love doing that. Some people play five-a-side football, but for me, building a business is more interesting. And then second to that, I feel passionately about giving back. So I'm involved in a number of different charities, the Princess Trust being one, something called the Rise program, which is all around investing in young adults and putting them into jobs or giving them microloans in order to start their own businesses. And I think it is so important that we are so fortunate in the roles that we are in, and that we help other people to do the same. Whether it's half a day that you spend with six people helping them, coach them on their interview that they've got at Boots, or whether it's financing a loan for someone, microloans, it's all paid back, 500 quid for them to go start an e-commerce website on Etsy or whatever it is. I think it's so important, and it's so nice to be able to give to a charity where you're not just giving money and it's disappearing, you're actually giving it to people and helping them become self-sufficient. I think that's a critical part. And then I have another charity called Give a Future that sits in Ethiopia, which I spent quite a lot of time at over the years. And that is, again, microfinance programs. That from my degree was one of the key reasons why I studied geography, to learn about microfinance and how it helped the third world develop. That charity is amazing. The kids now that we put through an orphanage are grown up, some of them having babies. It's quite scary. And so I stay very close to that as well. But yeah, I think it's so important when you work in such a fast-paced environment like software sales to have other things going on the outside. And actually, when I'm looking to hire people, quite often that's where I start. Like, what gets you up in the morning? What's your why? Like, why do you care? Like, why are you gonna go through the hard things, run through walls, all of that stuff? And quite often, the only way that you find that out is through the people who have interesting things going on at home or feel passionate about things outside of work. And I think it makes a much more rounded individual personally.
It's such a humbling thing to hear, Marina, and I think I don't want to get too deep here, but do you ever switch off?
No, probably not.
do your loved ones ever have any concerns about always being on, and in these types of environments and the pressures that you're putting yourself under with these multiple jobs and lots of things to help people? Are you ever concerned, or are you ever concerned about getting burnt out, and how do you stop that?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's definitely something that everyone should think about. So I think I have a very healthy balance, right? I go to bed at a normal time. I have a very clear routine. Everything is in a calendar that I follow. I make time to see my friends. Otherwise, you're right, I wouldn't. I make time to see my family. I'm a very family and friend orientated person. And I try now that I'm in leadership and, I've done the last 8 years, I try to keep the weekends free, and I do most of the time, right? And that's like, yeah, that's like sacred time where I can do what I want, do Pink Diesel, do the charity stuff. Um, but equally, I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, like sales does allow some level of flexibility, right? For example, you could get, like, I get up really early and I like the time when I get up and no one else is emailing me, right? But that might mean I might get up at like 6 o'clock and work all the way down through the day, but that might mean on a Friday that I log off at 4 o'clock, and that's fine. So I think, yeah, it's
Yeah.
everyone has to find their rhythm. I think for now I found it. It's definitely something that I reflect on lots to figure out whether I'm doing too much and all of those things. But I think if you're fit, healthy, getting enough sleep, then you're good.
So Marina, for individuals that are thinking about getting into software sales and actually making a career for it, obviously the money can be exceptional, but at the same time, should people do it just for the money?
No, in short, I don't think so. I don't think, classic comment, but like money doesn't buy happiness. You have to really want to do this job and enjoy it every day. But yes, obviously the money is a huge upside, but you don't make money in software sales without grafting and the hard work that comes behind it. So you really need to be like fully invested in it. But, from an entry level job perspective, when you're leaving university, I feel very strongly that an SDR job or a BDR job is a fantastic stepping stone in the right company from a learning development perspective and from an earnings perspective, right? You know, there's not many jobs where you leave university where you're being paid, I don't know what the salaries are now, but I think 40, 50 grand. That's a huge amount of money leaving university. My first job, I got paid, in fact, I got 21 grand. That was my first job. I don't think I could even eat for a year and live for a year with that now.
Absolutely, and you're totally right. I'm focusing on that point, right? Entry level, 40 to 50,000 on target earnings, and quickly as soon as you get out onto the field, you can look at anything from north 120,000 on target earnings to 200,000 now for an enterprise rep, right? So the money is absolutely exceptional. What three bits of advice could you give to anybody thinking about entering into software sales?
So I think first and foremost, right, it's all around finding a company that is going to develop you and invest in you, and leaders that care about you. So leadership and development, number one, 100%. You're not going to be successful if people don't back you and invest in you. The second thing is have a genuine curiosity for the thing that you are doing. Genuinely want to understand the problems that the solution solves. Genuinely care about the problems that your customers are facing and how you can articulate solving those problems. That curiosity piece is so essential, particularly as you're just starting off, and having the confidence to ask why, or ask for help, or ask for people's time. The worst thing that someone can say is no, and you just get back on with it. And rarely they will say no because everyone's pretty nice. And then the third thing I would say is have a growth mindset, right? Be open-minded about feedback, about suggestions that people make, because when you first come into this world, it's complicated, right? There are a lot of things to learn, and get feedback from people and be open to areas or challenges or things that you can improve on. And that will stand you in really good stead for being a very, very coachable person, which is a critical component of anyone working in these playbook companies.
Awesome. I think that's a really good place to kind of, to conclude, Marina. I think there's some key things that really jump out at me. I think the things that have really resonated with me personally is the fact that you're someone that, by your own admission, you don't claim that it's a talent thing. It is about having a plan. It's about having a strategy, and being relentless and dedicated and going above and beyond and sticking to the plan. And actually, it's the fundamentals that have served you well. It's not about doing something which is, obviously we talk about science and artistry, and it's not about necessarily just doing something that others can't do. It's about doing the things that really matter consistently, time and time again, and really being true to those. And I think that's so key. I think that's so fundamental. And just want to say a massive thank you to you for spending this time with us. We've really enjoyed having you on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute insightful interview. We've really appreciated so much of what you've had to share today. And thank you again for joining us today. To all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Please do like and subscribe to our various channels, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. And we look forward to welcoming you back to a show soon. Thank you very much.